After funding my girlfriend's sister's over-the-top wedding, I asked my girlfriend when we'd have our own. She said, "We don't need a label to be real." Her mother said, "Some men just aren't partner material." I sat there while they talked around me. That night, I opened the agency contract they thought I destroyed. That dinner was the moment I finally saw the whole picture, even if everyone else kept talking like I wasn't even there. We were sitting around Marla's long reclaimed wood table, the kind that was supposed to feel rustic and warm, but always felt cold and performative to me. The conversation was mostly about Tessa's sister's wedding. Lila and Jackson had just gotten back from their honeymoon in Jackson Hole, and Tessa kept telling the same story about the surprise hang glider entrance like it was the opening scene of a romantic comedy. I waited until the laughter died down, then said it as casually as I could. I was thinking, maybe it's our turn next? You know, a wedding of our own. The room froze for half a beat, and then Tessa let out this short, tight laugh. "You're sweet, babe, but we don't need all that. We've always said labels don't define us." I managed to smile, but my stomach was already turning. I tried to look at her, really look at her, but she'd already turned back to Marla. And then Marla, who'd barely acknowledged me all night, gave me that look, that sharp little squint, like she was lining up a target. "Some men just aren't built for commitment," she said, dabbing her napkin with two perfectly manicured fingers. "And that's okay, as long as they know their place." There wasn't a single beat of protest. Not from Tessa, not from anyone else. The conversation just picked up again, around me, like I wasn't even there. Lila started talking about flights to Cabo, and someone asked if the agency could expense them. And I just sat there, a silent fixture in the room. The guy who paid for things, but didn't belong in the photos. That night, when we got back to our apartment, I didn't say much. Tessa peeled off to shower, and I pulled the storage box out from under the bed. Inside were old bank statements, a few property tax documents, and one legal folder I hadn't touched in almost 6 years. Inside that folder was the co-ownership agreement, and signed, unrevoked, and still legally binding. My name was still there, in print, as managing partner and co-founder of the agency. The same agency I'd funded back when it was just a pipe dream with a Craigslist office lease. Tessa never made me sign the release. She just assumed I would, because I always had. I held the document in my hands, my thumb brushing over the embossed firm letterhead. I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel hurt. I felt something worse. Used, forgotten, boxed out of my own life like I was the intern who never left. I slid the folder back into the drawer, but not before making a copy. Then I sat at the kitchen island, turned on the overhead light, and opened a blank spreadsheet. The numbers didn't lie, and I was done pretending everything else didn't matter. Back then, it all felt like love. We met during sophomore year at the University of Illinois. She was in the theater program, all charisma and wild ideas, with black nail polish and a denim jacket covered in hand-sewn patches. I was the finance major who actually used a planner and balanced his meal plan account to the cent. I think that's what drew me in. She was everything I wasn't. We met at a campus coffee shop during open mic night. She was reading something she'd written, a monologue about mothers and mirrors and forgetting yourself, and I couldn't look away. I introduced myself after, said something lame about how it reminded me of my grandma's old apartment. She smiled and asked if I always led with budget-friendly compliments. That was it. We were inseparable after that. I used to sneak into the black box theater just to watch her direct actors like a storm moving through a room. She used to come by the library and leave sticky notes in my econ textbooks that said things like, "Save the world, one spreadsheet at a time." After college, I took a job at a firm that handled municipal bonds. Boring, stable, lucrative. Tessa had a string of unpaid internships and assistant gigs. One night, after a particularly brutal rejection, she curled up on our lumpy futon and said, "What if I started my own agency? One that actually gave a damn about new talent?" And I said yes. That's how it started. I found her a cheap office sublet near the Chicago River. 3rd floor, no elevator, but it had character. I fronted the money for the lease, for a used desk, for business cards, even for the first couple months of salary for the assistant she said she couldn't live without. When the agency launched, she insisted I be listed as managing partner, even though she made it clear she'd be running everything. "I just want you to have skin in the game," she said, holding my hand across a diner table, "because I couldn't do any of this without you." And I believed her. The years that followed were a blur. My job paid the bills. Her agency gave her purpose. We moved into a nicer apartment, upgraded from the futon to a real bed. We didn't talk about ownership percentages or exit strategies. We just worked. Me during the day with city contracts and yield curves. Her at night with actors and audition reels and vision boards. I watched her light up every time someone signed with her. I paid for the catered showcases, the branded tote bags, the second lease when she said they needed a creative expansion floor. I never asked for repayment. I told myself love meant giving without counting. But as time went on, the numbers I wasn't tracking started to weigh on me. I was the silent partner, the investor without a nameplate. And even then, I didn't think twice. Not yet. I remember the exact moment it all started to crack. It was during a Zoom call. Tessa had her laptop propped on a stack of design books, and I was in the kitchen pretending to be interested in this agency brainstorming session. Her sister Lila's wedding was 3 months away, and Jackson, the fiancé, had just lost his job at some hedge fund that imploded overnight. He's just going through a rough patch, Tessa kept saying, like it was a seasonal flu. They'll bounce back. I didn't say much. I never did when it came to Lila. But I overheard her on the phone the next day with one of her agency partners. Don't worry. We've got this, she said. She laughed, warm, effortless. Worst case scenario, I'll pull from our joint accounts. Eli won't even notice. That stopped me. My hand froze on the coffee scoop. I would notice. Not because I was stingy, but because lately, it felt like every time I tried to bring up our finances, she changed the subject. Still, I didn't say anything right away. I wanted to believe it was just a figure of speech. It wasn't. A week later, I logged into our bank account to pay off a credit card. That's when I saw the withdrawals, 3 of them. One for venue upgrades, one labeled Lila Gift Fund, and another transferred straight from the agency's business account. Combined, just shy of $50,000. $50,000. That was the cost of a new SUV, or the down payment on a second property, or, I don't know, our wedding, if we'd ever had one. I brought it up that night, gently, like a man trying to avoid landmines. Tess, why is our money funding Lila's wedding? She didn't look up from her phone. They needed help. Help is a few hundred for flowers, I said, keeping my voice steady. Not 5 figures. She finally looked at me then, annoyed, like I was ruining a perfectly nice evening. It's not just her wedding, she said. It's a family event. We're family. And what are we? I asked. Roommates with a joint checking account? Her jaw tightened. You're blowing this way out of proportion. But I wasn't. Not anymore. We went to the wedding 2 months later. It was at a converted airplane hangar in Colorado, sleek and cold and loud with rented elegance. Everyone was dressed in metallics. Jackson gave a toast about second chances. Tessa stood beside her sister all night like royalty. No one mentioned me. I poured drinks, offered rides, helped the caterers carry out boxes when it rained. And not one person thanked me, not even Tessa. During the dinner, someone clinked a glass and toasted to the woman who made this whole thing possible. Everyone cheered. Tessa blushed. I just stared at my plate. The next morning, while we packed our bags, I tried one more time. I said, when do we get to plan something of our own? Tessa didn't look up. Don't start, she muttered, stuffing her dress into a garment bag. It's just not a priority right now. And that was it. That was the moment I knew. I was a tool, a resource, a credit line, not a partner, not even close. After that dinner, something in me shifted. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was something colder, quieter, like a tide rolling back from the shore. The next morning, I called Rob, my lawyer. We hadn't spoken in months, not since he helped my cousin settle a real estate mess. But he picked up right away. Rob, you still have that co-ownership agreement from the agency? Yeah, I think so, he said. Why? It was never voided, never signed off. Still active. There was a pause on the line. You serious? Dead serious. He exhaled. Okay, you want to make a move? Not yet, I said, but I want to start laying groundwork. That night, while Tessa was out hosting an improv fundraiser, I sat down at her agency's financial dashboard. She'd never changed the login. She trusted me. Why wouldn't she? The numbers were a mess. Subscriptions we didn't need. Payments marked as vendor comp that had nothing to do with clients. Thousands in transfers flagged under vague descriptions like engagement support and sister outreach. One of them aligned perfectly with Lila's mini-moon, a hotel charge in Vail labeled Team Retreat. I made a spreadsheet, a quiet one. No color coding, just dates, charges, and questions. Then I called Cal, the agency's accountant. Nervous guy, always apologizing for things that weren't his fault. I asked for a call. He picked up immediately. Hey Cal, it's Eli. Oh hey, everything okay? Yeah. I just had a few questions about the books. Tessa mentioned something about shifting oversight, and since I'm technically still a managing partner, he went quiet. You're still on the LLC? He asked, voice a little higher. Yep, and we never filed the release. Okay, he said slowly. Well, sure. I can get you access to the full breakdown. We'll just need to do a compliance notice. Already drafted, I said. He sighed. All right, I'll send over the master log. You'll see everything. And I did. Over the next week, I quietly audited every line. I froze unnecessary expenses. I paused the premium software tool she barely used. I flagged 3 contractors billing for the same project. No one noticed. Or maybe they just assumed it was Robin, her assistant, cleaning house. I made no announcements. I sent no emails. I didn't even hint at it to Tessa. Because I knew something now, power doesn't always come from yelling or demanding. Sometimes it comes from knowing where the cracks are. And knowing that the moment you decide to stop holding everything up, it collapses. I wasn't plotting revenge. I was preparing the truth. And the truth? It had numbers. And numbers don't lie. I filed the paperwork while I was supposedly visiting my cousin in Michigan. That's what I told Tessa. I even sent her a photo of a random gas station outside Kalamazoo that I grabbed from Google Maps. She replied with a thumbs up and a quick drive safe, smiley face, like I was just another detail in her day. But really, I was in Rob's office downtown, signing documents to reinstate full managerial control of the agency under my name. Once this gets delivered, Rob said, sliding the last form across his desk, she's going to flip. I'm counting on it. We sent the certified packet by courier with signature confirmation. I waited 3 days before going home. When I walked through the door, I knew something was off. The lights were already on. Tessa was sitting on the edge of the couch like she'd been posed there, knees together, spine stiff. And next to her, with her arms folded and eyes cold as granite, was Marla. Great. You want to tell me what the hell this is? Tessa said, waving the envelope like it was a court summons. I think it's pretty clear, I said, setting down my keys. I reinstated my authority, the one I never technically gave up. Marla stood. This is a betrayal, Eli. No, I said, voice steady. This is a correction. Tessa's voice rose, sharp and shaky. You went behind my back. You undermined me. You emptied joint accounts, I said. You redirected company funds for personal use. You made decisions that impacted both of us without a word. You made it clear. I wasn't a partner. Marla scoffed. You're acting like a child. And you're acting like your daughter didn't just steal from someone who built her business from the ground up. I walked to the kitchen, opened the drawer by the sink, and pulled out the folder I'd been carrying around for weeks. The one with the flagged payments, the veiled charges, the marketing fluff that somehow cost as much as a used car. I dropped it on the table. This is a preliminary audit. If you want to challenge the reinstatement, I'd advise reading every page first. Tessa didn't move. Marla picked up the top sheet, skimmed it, then looked up at me. You wouldn't. I smiled, but there was nothing friendly in it. You think your connections will protect you? You think your reputation means more than paper trails? Try me. For the first time, Tessa's voice cracked. We can talk about this. You didn't have to go nuclear. I looked at her. I asked. I brought it up, over and over. And you laughed it off. You stole from me, and you did it with a smile. She looked down at her lap. I stepped back, grabbed my bag from the stool by the door. Where are you going? Marla snapped. Somewhere quiet, I said. I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to make a deal. I'm just done. Tessa stood up, eyes wide. Wait, Eli, we can fix this. But I was already at the door. I'm not interested in fixing anything, I said. I'm interested in watching the truth do its job. I walked out and didn't look back. Behind me, the apartment stayed quiet, the kind of quiet that only shows up when everything fake finally falls apart. They didn't think I'd follow through. That much was obvious the minute Kil called me in a panic. Eli, she just tried to move 60 grand out of the operating account. Said it was for a strategic marketing pivot. When? I asked. This morning. I paused. And the account? Frozen, he said. I flagged it and notified the bank per your authority filing. They locked it before the transfer cleared. Good. I hung up and leaned back in my chair. I was at a co-working space I'd rented for the week, neutral ground. Clean desk, good coffee, no history. I had everything I needed. The laptop, the master ledger, and a PDF folder labeled misuse evidence. By noon, I had an email from Rob. Subject, urgent. Attempted fund siphoning, action locked. Attachment, recorded call from Cal, access logs, flagged expenses. By 5 p.m., Tessa was locked out of the agency's back end. By 7, her team was on a video call, one she hadn't scheduled, hadn't been invited to, and couldn't access. I told them everything. No dramatics, no bitterness. Just facts. The misdirected funds. The personal expenses billed as company retreats. The favoritism. The lies. The silence. I showed them the numbers. And they believed me. The junior account manager, a quiet guy named Devin, nodded slowly as I scrolled through flagged invoices. That explains why she kept pushing back payroll, he said. I thought I was going crazy. Another employee, Amanda, the talent coordinator, spoke next. She charged $1,000 to a spa in Aspen. That was the same week she said we couldn't afford new headshots for the actors. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. They saw it now, what I had been seeing for months. That night, I started getting texts from unlisted numbers. One was from an anonymous tip line I'd set up just in case. Tip 1. Marla billed the agency for legal services she never performed. Said it was mentorship. We all knew it was fake. Tip 2. Lila's wedding vendors got paid through a shell LLC, one listed under the agency's tax number. Tip 3. Check the consulting agreement for MDR Advisory. That's Marla's initials. Nobody ever met them. The company address? Her beach house. It was more than a mistake. It was laundering. Plain and simple. The next morning, I submitted the documentation to the agency's compliance attorney and quietly CC'd a contact I had at the State Board of Business Licensing. No press. No drama. Just clean, paper-based truth. By the end of the week, the office was whispering. Tessa had tried to come in and found her keycard deactivated. She stood outside for 20 minutes in sunglasses and a designer trench coat, texting Robin until she realized no one was going to let her in. Marla was worse. She called the office herself, demanding to speak to whoever thinks they're in charge. I happened to answer the line that day. "Hi, Marla," I said. "I think that's me now." There was a pause, just long enough to taste. "You're making a mess," she hissed. "This will come back to you." "I hope so," I said, "because everything I'm finding, it has your name on it." The silence on the line was the cleanest thing I'd heard all month. That weekend, I got confirmation the audit had triggered a state-level investigation. The agency wasn't just restructuring, it was under scrutiny. I poured myself a drink, opened my laptop, and stared at the spreadsheet I'd built. One line at the top now read: Control, reclaimed. Damage, contained. Truth, spreading. And for the first time in years, I slept like a man with nothing left to lose. It didn't take long for Tessa to break. For days after she was officially locked out, I got an email from her new attorney, a guy named Clifford Drayton who used phrases like amicable resolution and preserve mutual reputations. He wanted a meeting. I said no. So Tessa showed up in person. She waited outside the agency building in a black coat and wide sunglasses like she was dodging paparazzi. I saw her through the window and told the front desk to keep the doors locked. 10 minutes later, I got a text. "Tessa, please, just talk to me. We can fix this. No lawyers." I replied with one word. "Me. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Bring your lawyer." Rob and I booked a private conference room at a co-working space across town. It was sterile and bright, glass walls, sleek furniture, nothing emotional. Tessa came in looking brittle. Clifford followed, carrying a leather folio like it was a shield. We sat across from each other. I didn't offer pleasantries. "Let's be efficient," I said. "You know what I've found. You've seen the audits." Clifford tried to interrupt. "We'd like to propose a reconciliation plan." I slid a flash drive across the table. He stopped. "There's a recording on there," I said. "Two of your client's employees. One detailing a fake vendor account used to launder agency money into a private vacation fund. The other, a contractor admitting he was told to falsify invoices under Tessa's direction." Tessa's mouth opened slightly, then closed. Clifford blinked. "You recorded staff?" "No. They sent me the recordings themselves. Voluntarily. I've got 7 more." I pulled out a single sheet of paper and laid it on the table. "These are the terms," I said. "She will surrender full ownership of the agency. She will sign a statement admitting to financial misconduct and misuse of company funds. Restitution will be calculated and paid out over time. And she will agree to a permanent gag clause, no interviews, no spin, no alternate versions of the story." Clifford's voice was thin. "You can't expect her to agree to this." I leaned in, calm. "Try me." Tessa finally spoke. "You're enjoying this," she said. "You want to humiliate me." I looked at her, really looked at her. "No, I want to end this. Quietly. You walk away. I move forward. But if you make this public, I will make sure everything comes out, not just the agency fraud, but Marla's shell companies, the forged consultation receipts, the way you used me." Her voice broke slightly. "I didn't mean to. You meant every choice," I said. "And now you're going to own them." She looked at Clifford. He didn't say anything. She signed. 3 pages. No argument. No tears. When it was done, she stood slowly, gathered her bag, and walked out without looking back. Rob watched her leave, then exhaled. "Well," he said, "that was cleaner than I expected." I stared at the signed papers. "Not clean," I said, "but done." There would be no press release, no public takedown, just silence. And for once, I was the one who owned it. I renamed the agency 2 weeks later. We went from the Hartwell Group, Tessa's pick, a nod to her mother's maiden name, to Second Stage. It was subtle, deliberate. Theater people would get the reference. Everyone else just liked how it sounded. I hosted a relaunch event in the same studio space where Tessa used to hold client mixers. This time, there were no signature cocktails or velvet ropes. Just real people, folding chairs, and coffee in mismatched mugs. I stood in front of a projector screen and told the truth. Not all of it. I didn't name names. I didn't throw anyone under the bus. But I told the story of invisible labor, of the men and women who build things in the background and never get credit, of how easy it is for someone to smile and thank you while quietly erasing you. I told them how I funded a dream without ever being seen as part of it, how silence isn't support, it's erasure, and how I wasn't going to be silent anymore. I saw nods around the room, not just from staff, but from the clients, the ones who always paid on time, who stuck around even when things got messy. After the event, someone handed me a card. No name, just a typed note. We knew. Thank you for saying it out loud. I didn't need to know who it came from. I just slipped it into my wallet and moved on. But the real reckoning didn't happen at second stage. It happened online. A quiet little leak from someone inside Marla's old legal network. Screenshots, timestamps, billing records. Someone had submitted an anonymous packet to the state bar and copied the IRS. One of the shell LLCs Tessa used had Marla listed as a consultant. The same LLC that paid for Lila's wedding photographer, venue, and dress, all labeled as legal strategy sessions. By the time word reached me, Marla's name had been scrubbed from 2 nonprofit boards and 1 local university's donor list. She sold her house in Wilmette within a month. Tessa, meanwhile, disappeared from the agency circuit entirely. Her last public appearance was a tone-deaf Instagram post about creative rest from a rental cabin in Vermont. It got 27 likes, none from industry people. Lila and Jackson didn't fare much better. Their shared account, once filled with blurry brunch shots and overpriced content retreats, vanished overnight. The rumor was they'd been audited after an anonymous tip about undeclared gift income and business write-offs that didn't exist. Their assets were frozen. Their wedding planner even posted a now-deleted story that simply read, "When people steal joy, the bill always comes due." I didn't respond to any of it. I didn't need to. Instead, I went back to work. We restructured contracts at the agency, made everything transparent. Everyone got proper credit. We set up mentorship programs, built out a partnership with a public arts high school downtown. For the first time, we didn't just manage talent. We grew it. One afternoon, I walked past the front desk and saw our newest intern, a shy kid from Evanston with a stutter and a notebook full of sketches, handing a latte to a client like he'd been born for it. He caught me looking and grinned. "You good?" I asked. "Best day yet," he said. I smiled. "Good. Let's keep it that way." I walked back to my office. Framed on the wall was the mission statement I wrote on the first day of the rebrand. Support isn't silence. It's being seen. No one laughed at it. No one questioned it. They just got to work. And so did I. Tessa tried to rebrand. She launched a soft-lit Instagram profile under the handle at Tessa Creates, filled with vague inspirational quotes and heavily filtered selfies holding herbal tea. The tagline read, "Creative guidance for aligned living." I clicked through once, just to see. She had 6 posts and 3 likes on each, 2 from bots, 1 from Lila. The theater community didn't follow. Neither did her former clients. Word travels fast in a small industry, especially when you've been caught funneling funds through fake consulting agreements. She tried to host a webinar on navigating creative burnout, but it was canceled due to technical difficulties. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt distance, a clean, calm kind, like looking at a painting you used to love and realizing it no longer moves you. Back at the agency, my agency, things had shifted. We weren't flashy. We weren't loud, but we were honest. Our new roster included public school teachers moonlighting as playwrights, immigrant choreographers, late-in-life actors who had given up too much to be overlooked again. We started a residency program for local creatives, funded by a grant I helped write. Every quarter, 2 artists got studio space, mentorship, and a modest stipend. Nothing huge, but it mattered. We also built out a youth partnership with a community theater in Pilsen. The kids came in wide-eyed and full of nervous energy. They left quoting Shakespeare and writing original pieces about their neighborhoods. That's where I met Claire. She was leading costume design for the middle school production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. I walked in to drop off a few donated mannequins from a local arts collective. She looked up from behind a table full of tangled thread and asked if I knew how to untangle a bobbin tension issue. I didn't, so she showed me, patiently, kindly. Claire used to work in costume design for regional theaters. A car accident 2 years ago forced her to pivot. She started working at a cafe near the studio. Quiet job, reliable hours. She said she liked how coffee didn't ask for applause. We started seeing each other slowly. Coffee first, Then late-night conversations on folding chairs. She never asked about the agency drama. She never flinched when I told her the messiest parts. She just listened fully, like she was trying to understand without fixing anything. That was new for me. My mom came to visit the studio not long after that. She'd been sick, quietly, stubbornly sick, and finally let me fly her in from Peoria. She sat in the lobby and watched a rehearsal through the glass, smiling like she was watching her own memories perform. "You built something good here," she said. "Something real." That was the last time she visited. She passed away 2 months later, peacefully, in her sleep. Claire came with me to the funeral, held my hand the whole time. She didn't say much, but when we got back to the hotel, she put on an old jazz record on her phone and let me sit in silence until I was ready to speak. Sometimes peace doesn't come like fireworks. It comes like that, quietly, in small rooms, in the hands of someone who doesn't need to be impressed to love you. I still keep that old co-ownership document in a drawer at home, not out of bitterness, just as a reminder. You can give someone everything and still lose yourself in the transaction. But you can also come back from it. You can rebuild. You can start again. And this time, build it right. I sent the email on a Tuesday. It had been almost a year since the dinner at Marla's. 10 months since I'd walked out of the agency with the signed surrender in one hand and my name in full control. 8 months since the audit took root. 6 since Marla sold her house. And now, it was time. The subject line was simple. For the record, the recipients: Tessa, Marla, Lila, Jackson, and for good measure, Robin, her old assistant, who deserved to see it too. The email was short, 3 paragraphs, no greetings, no sign-offs. I attached a folder, copies of the co-ownership agreement, unrevoked, financial records highlighting every misused agency charge, internal messages where agency funds were redirected without authorization, the audio files from Devin and Amanda, bank reports tying Lila and Jackson's wedding expenses to the shell company in Marla's name, an IRS case reference number. I didn't editorialize. I didn't insult. I didn't even demand a response. I ended it with one line. This is not revenge. It's accountability. Do with it what you will. And then I hit send. No reply came. Not that day, not that week, not ever. But I watched. Lila and Jackson's accounts were frozen again within a month. Their once buzzy lifestyle blog now redirected to a 404 error. The house in Jackson Hole quietly went on the market. Marla's speaking engagements dried up. The last event she was scheduled to keynote, a conference on women in law, quietly replaced her name with TBA. Tessa vanished from every professional registry tied to the entertainment industry. But me? I stayed right where I was. At second stage, we hung a quote on the wall above the main conference table. Framed in plain blackwood, printed in 12-point type. Support isn't silence. It's being seen. That was my message. Not just to them, but to myself. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to fight. I didn't need a courtroom to tell me I had value. I had already proved it. With numbers, with patience, with truth. One night, as I locked up the studio, Claire met me outside. We walked to the train together, hands in our coat pockets, not touching but close. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "I am." She smiled. "You're different lately." "I feel different. Better." I thought about it. Lighter. We didn't talk much after that. We just watched the train arrive, its headlights cutting the dark in two. It pulled in with a low hum and a scatter of warm interior light. We stepped on, together, and behind us, the city carried on loud, messy, full of endings and beginnings no one ever sees coming. I didn't look back. I had nothing left to prove.